You can either take the red pill. You'll wake up. Everything was a dream. Or you can take the black pill. You can get torched.
Well, I suppose getting torched won't hurt that much. I don't feel anything.
Wait for it.
Oh, wait. I just got a new client. Get torched! Get torched! Get torched!
I'm Wayne Carey, and this is The Truth Hurts.
Well, we're back for The Truth Hurts. I'm Ayrton Woolley alongside the King, Wayne Carey. Duck, good to see you.
Very good. Another interesting weekend, wasn't it? We don't just talk footy on this show, but you just have to talk about, what's gone on. The footy world's mad. We did nail it last week when we said there will be a couple of other big upsets. But before we get into that, how many rounds have you got? Because every time you come in now on a Monday, you look a little bit banged up. You look like, you're limping in. You've had a few back problems, a little bit of a hypochondriac. But how is your team looking?
The Yarraville Twos, they're still in the top four.
So how many weeks have you played for now?
About 6 weeks now, I think.
6 weeks. And you haven't been able to fight your way into the ones?
I don't think that'll be happening, Duck, in my current weight. But I am making progress on the fitness front, I'll have you know. So feeling better every week. What I will say is, we're probably going to drop out of the top four in the final round, which is going to hurt. We had a big game on the weekend. We needed to win against a side that was below us. We're up by 2 goals, three-quarter time in a low-scoring game. I did score, it was probably goal of the year, but we won't talk about that. There was a moment, and I feel a little bit bad for bringing it up.
We can probably use that vision, given it's the twos.
I wish there was vision of it. It was a little nice little left foot banana on the run from about 35. Crowd went up. It was it was a real team lifter.
Oh yeah.
I feel bad for this bloke for bringing it up because I'm sure he feels pretty bad. There's a bloke in our team. He's just come back from injury.
What's his name?
Kieran Redder, we call him. He's a big red man. He's actually a very good ruckman by reserve standards. He's made a big difference to our team since he's been back. But he did have a moment that I reckon he'd like to take back from the weekend.
What's he done?
So last quarter, scores were level. There's about 6 minutes on the clock. He's at about half forward or maybe just forward of the wing. And he's taken the ball out of the ruck. And I was in the forward line, and I'm like, Redder. And he's turned around and he's roosted it about 50 metres the wrong way.
You're kidding me.
And so our defenders at that stage were pressed up pretty high. It's gone out the back, and the opposition's run onto it and kicked the goal to put them up by a goal with a few minutes left in it. And it was just one of those ones that kind of killed them.
Another great example.
Have you ever? I've never seen it before.
It's happened a few times, but not that bad. Like you certainly don't want it to go out the back, so they run onto it. But that's just another great example. Don't get involved in the actual play, ruckman. Just tap it. Especially if you are a ruckman in the Magoos, you're probably skill wise limited. Otherwise, you would be in the ones.
I hope he's not listening.
No,
he is our fines master, so I hope he finds himself this week for.
Sounds like it. Talking about getting fines. You obviously won't be going through this for a couple of years, but book week, the kids.
Oh yes.
So I had to go to a book week this morning. I've missed a few book weeks over the last couple of years, but got there this year. And Charlotte, all dressed up she dressed up as a cat. So I had to pin the tail on her skirt this morning, and the ears, and her mum put the nose and the whiskers on, and so all really good. But it's quite interesting when you go to the school and you see the parents. Be fair to say, I'm not one that, the working bee at the school. I'm not the one pulling weeds out on a Sunday arvo.
Not surprised by that.
No, I don't really get involved in a lot of the school activities, but I'm there, school pick up, drop off, all of that. But got there this morning, and you see the parents, and you see some of the kids that have gone about their outfits by themselves, and some you can obviously tell because they're young kids, and some have got just a little coat hanger, making out that that's the ears of a rabbit. Others have gone to a lot of trouble. There was a little Mary Poppins girl there this morning, and you could just see that the parents have put in a lot of work. This kid just looked like Mary Poppins, right? Even the makeup, the umbrella, like everything right down. There's about 150 Spider-Man like running around, so very popular. Then you had a lot of footballers, a lot of basketballers, which is easy. And I guess that's able, it is book week.
So book week, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of basketball books.
Okay.
You know, Steph Curry and LeBron. Everyone's
autobiographies.
Everyone's written a book.
Yeah,
There's no Truth Hurts.
No doubt it.
There's no ducks running around with the Truth Hurts book. Did see one of the kid, 50 Shades of Grey. No, there was no kid with that book. But there was just the effort that some parents go to. It's astounding. And then you've got to sit there and watch, the kids, they do the parade and everyone cheers and whatever. So a very interesting morning. But I was glad that I was able to get to this morning's because sometimes I haven't been able to get there. The other big thing that came through on the weekend is, and I was trying to explain this to Charlotte before we went to Book Week this morning, is, when you go into a cafe, like manners cost you nothing.
Agree, totally.
And you should always say thank you and please and all that sort of stuff. And I was blown away. A mate of mine, and I won't mention the kids' names because I don't want to embarrass them, but came over from Perth, and his two 17-year-old boys, beautiful boys, sat in a couple of venues over the weekend, and they were just so well mannered. And you just sit there and watch these kids, and I watch, mine, jumping on someone's couch, crawling over the bench tops, just stuff you shouldn't be doing. And if you're in a restaurant, you shouldn't be crawling under the tables. And I know these kids were 17, but you can just tell that they're just immaculate in.
Well, hopefully your kids when they get to 17, yes.
No, but there's just things you try to instill, and respect for one's furniture, and in a restaurant sit there. And
it is a bit of a saying, isn't it? The way you even treat wait staff or someone who's waiting on you is it can be a judgment on your character. And
well, back in the day, you'd get a clip behind the ear if you didn't say thank you or please. Yeah. These days are gone, and so they should be. But things have changed now. The kids running around the restaurant and doing.
So you think there's less manners now?
Way less manners now than what there used to be, in my humble opinion, and how you look at kids. And when I do see a family with kids sitting there perfect, because then I look at mine, and I see how they using their knife and fork and everything else, and I sometimes I'll go home and say, like, how have you done this?
Where did I go wrong?
That's quite. The other thing you've got to let kids be is be kids.
Yes.
Whereas I don't think.
How do you rate your own manners game?
Mine?
Yeah.
I've got very good manners.
Okay.
Extremely good manners. Always thank you, please. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that story, Wayne. That was.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it's just these little things bob up in one's life. Book week. Like I said, you'll get to it at some point. Let's get onto the footy.
Yeah, I mean, some massive results. You touched on the upsets. The biggest was the Dogs losing to West Coast, which basically means their finals chances are just about stuffed, depending on results, which we'll go into in a second. It puts a bit of heat on Luke Beveridge. You're not a coach sacker, and I'm not asking for him to be sacked. But he made some really interesting comments after the game. He was asked about whether the Dogs are getting enough out of their list, and he suggested that the media or the outside footy world focuses on a few players at the top end, and basically suggested that outsiders don't have a great grasp on the Dogs list as a whole. What do you think about this Dogs list, and is missing finals an underachievement for them?
Absolutely an underachievement if they don't play finals. They've been in a position to do that, and they're now in a position where they can miss.
I had them top four, so
yeah, I didn't have them top four, I must say. When a coach makes comments like that, I think you have to take it as face value. They know their list better than anyone else. They know one's weaknesses and strengths better than the outside, including all the experts that sit there and don't get to see how they train every week, don't get their skills every week. So they know their flaws, and some of it might be decision-making. And then under duress, they make really poor decisions. Beveridge knows that better than, whether it be David King or Gary Lyon or Dermy or whoever, any of those guys that are looking from afar. I'm not saying that that's who he was talking about.
Yeah.
But they're the good ones at what they do.
So is it a sledge for the bottom 5 or 10 blokes in his
absolutely it is. It's a bit of a backhander to them to say, well,
you're not good enough.
Yeah, we're actually not good enough at the bottom end of our list.
So I think they could be improving in their bottom 3 or 4 players, but I don't think their list is any worse than any of the sides that have been up the top. So, I mean, has it gone wrong for them, do you think?
Well, they've lost games that they've been expected to win. Look, their reliance on Norton up forward, and he's been sort of in some good form, out of form. He's missed goals that he should have kicked.
Yep.
There's a lot of different reasons for why the Bulldogs are where they're at, but to be beaten yesterday by West Coast Eagles is deplorable. The way West Coast have been going, and that's taking nothing away from them, but other than this is a team that got smashed by Fremantle by over 100 points last week. So that's and aside fighting for the 8. I did say this last week. What these last 2 rounds throw up are teams that have nothing to lose and teams that have a lot to lose. And clearly the Bulldogs had a lot to lose, and that's exactly what happened. They got bitten on the bottom.
So the Luke Beveridge question, the Dogs have committed to him long term. They've been pretty steadfast in being behind him. He's their premiership coach. He's taking them to another grand final. Is there a point where even that level of coach has got everything he can get out of a group? Because a lot of these guys have been around for 5 or 6 years. How do you view the Luke Beveridge question with the Bulldogs?
I'm a fan of Luke Beveridge. So unlike others, is he getting the best out of the group? It is a question. But I'm not letting Luke Beveridge go for me. This is a completely new list to what he had obviously back when they won the flag. It's been turned over, completely different in actual fact. So they've got some big decisions to make, though. They do need some more depth, I think, back and forward. I don't think they're as strong in those positions of what everyone says. They had a lot of depth that can run through the middle of the ground. But I'm sticking with Luke Beveridge. I'm not saying he's gone, but it's funny how the messaging from different coaches over the weekend as well. I mean, you got Brad Scott saying, making finals, we probably didn't want to get ahead of ourselves, and we're also looking to the future.
He's tried to do that all year, hasn't he? He's tried to play it down a little bit, Brad.
And then you've got Kingsley who are saying, no, we want to play finals footy. GWS have been a great story given at the start that they got off to, and clearly they're a team that can still play finals, and that's their aim. What about St Kilda and Ross Lyon? And everyone 3 weeks ago said, and a couple of these experts in the media, St Kilda will drop off. They can't play they won't play finals because of their run home. Ross Lyon is coach of the year. Easily coach of the year for me.
They've done well now, so they're locked in the finals given the results on the weekend.
One of the only teams that have been in the 8 the whole year.
Yeah.
Have been in from the start, and remarkable given their list. Remarkable given the injuries that they've had as well during the year. They've had players come back. It really, truly does show you and contradicts a little bit about what we spoke about last week. A coach can make a difference, and he has made a massive difference to this group. This is a question without notice. I guess the knock on St Kilda at different times in the past few years has been they've been around this mark, but maybe their ceiling hasn't been it hasn't been a premiership ceiling. Do you think with Ross at the helm with the current list they can do it, or they need more depth?
Yeah.
If you look at who they've got available to them, I would argue that they're maybe the least talented in terms of their list for me.
In the top 8.
That is in the top 8 at the moment. But well structured, pressure gone through the roof, which Ross Lyon teams just have automatically. They had that flat period where they were, just their ball movement.
Couldn't really score much, could they?
Yeah, ball movement sort of stagnated a little bit. Now they've got that back. They've got that flow back, playing on, taking the game on. But more importantly, that pressure, that manic pressure that they're putting on, they just overwhelmed Geelong. They were unbelievably good.
So Ross is an interesting case, Ross, isn't he? Because he's been out of the game. He's come back. He's maybe had to adapt his style a little bit because the game is perhaps not quite as defensive as when he last coached. But there's something about these guys that can, when we talk about coaches getting the best out of players, Ross has got a little bit of fear factor, doesn't he? But he's
Oh,
also
yeah.
is he kind of quirky as well,
He
Ross?
set standards. Very funny man.
Yeah.
Very funny.
Because you've worked closely with Ross.
Yeah, and he's the
What's he
sort of
like? What's he like off air?
No, he's a beauty. He's great company. Very funny, and very intelligent as well. So,
But he does think differently. Do you think?
when he got to St Kilda, my understanding is he just set new standards, and thought that the way they were going about things, he thought that they could do a lot better in certain areas, and a lot of that's based around system and effort. Effort being, I reckon, even before system. So their effort, and you look at them when they play their best footy, that shines through with all Ross Lyon teams, and it has. He took teams to grand finals and been unlucky not to have won a couple.
Well, speaking of coaches and interesting post-match comments, I saw with interest your mate Simon Goodwin and what he said about Finn McGuinness, who did a great job tagging Clayton Oliver. Oliver, 14 disposals. McGuinness had 13 himself. So basically took Oliver out of the game. Now, Melbourne still won, but it was close for the most part in that game. And Goodwin sort of said, he wasn't even trying to win the footy. That's frustrating. He sort of suggested, he was sort of intimating like it was not really in the spirit in a way, I thought.
If you've got a Finn McGuinness, you use him. And he's done another great job on a superstar player. So I don't necessarily when you're the coach of the superstar player, you want them to have a fair go. And I didn't see the game closely enough to be honest with you. It was one of those games where I thought, if Melbourne, I know Hawthorn have been in good form, but I thought if Melbourne just can't win this, then
so you're at the pub.
Yeah, exactly. So if they don't win this, then they're in trouble as well. But what you don't want is a player that just has his not eyes on the ball whatsoever, and is actually going against the rules. So maybe there might have been a little bit of that. So eyes not on the footy at a stoppage, eyes on Oliver, and taking his run and that type of stuff. Well, that type of tagging is I can see how coaches don't like that.
So on the weekend, the huge controversy has been spoken about a whole lot. We'll touch on it briefly. So it was the goal review, which had big finals ramifications, meant Sydney are in, Adelaide are out. Ben Keys had the snap, with just about a minute remaining. Clearly didn't hit the post, but the umpire didn't call for the review. There's a few facets to the argument since the AFL's sort of thrown the goal umpire under the bus, saying, well, it wouldn't have mattered what technology we had because he didn't call for the review. Is it still a technology issue because we have no trust in it, or is this just plain human error?
Just a human error, horrendous error, given the ramifications of it. A lot of mistakes are made during a game of footy by players, by coaches, by umpires, but the goal umpire won. I mean, you see them review goals when there's no doubt that it was a goal.
Yeah.
Or there's no doubt that it was a point.
Yeah.
He had to have had some doubt, that goal umpire. That's why this is quite astounding. The other part of it all is obviously how it's affected other teams. So all those teams that were still alive, if the Crows had won, are now obviously dead and buried for the year. It's one of the bigger single umpire mistakes at that stage of a game that I can remember. I can't remember a bigger mistake that has affected as many teams.
When you can see what it means. Because
it's actually stuffed the last round.
Yeah, absolutely. The AFL would be fuming because although there's 3 or 4 teams now that are cooked.
Yep.
I mean, it's
the interest around the last round because of that mistake not only cost those teams, and those teams that would have, if they were to play finals, the money that team would have generated for playing finals, but the AFL also, the crowds, the viewing audience, all of those things are completely different because of that one error.
Yeah, I've saw some interesting comments from.
I feel sorry for he's made a mistake, the goal umpire, but I sort of feel sorry for him.
I do too. He's probably a good goal umpire. He's just had a mare in that moment.
People do forget that the umpires are sponsored by Specsavers.
Goal umpiring. Have you ever stood behind the goals when it's not actually that? It's not that easy. Goal umpiring. Oh, you're laughing at your own.
It's a spell.
Sometimes when it's coming in.
That.
Anyway,
goal umpiring job, the easiest job in the
I saw
in the game.
I saw some interesting comments from Nathan Burke.
Boundary umpire at least has to get the toss right. And, some of them can't even do that, but they at least have to do that. But the goal umpire just has to.
No, a minute ago you said you'd barely take part in book week. You've never stood behind the goals in a bloody game of football.
I have so.
What Auskick goals don't count?
I've umpired a couple of. I've been a goal umpire a couple of times. It's not that hard.
Not when 6-year-old kids are kicking it through.
You got to shuffle. You just got to shuffle. Be courageous. Don't be scared to get in there. Get in the right position. I think Dave Roden is the best goal umpire.
I laugh every time he was sitting there yesterday.
He's entertaining.
He
He's
smiles.
got that little bit of smirk.
Yeah.
He's just, you know what? He's energy. He doesn't always call for because when he's 100%, I don't think he's ever got one wrong, and doesn't call for the review. Unlike what this guy should have done. Have they actually named him? I don't think they should, but has he been named?
I think some outlets have named him, but the AFL didn't name him.
Probably shouldn't.
Speaking of money and money lost, I saw some really interesting comments from Nathan Burke yesterday, who said, when I've been on the board of Footy Club before, if there's been a controversy, the AFL, if you don't respond too strongly, which Adelaide have been very measured in their response, if you don't respond too strongly, well, obviously the result can't be changed in this instance, but the AFL might wink, say, well, maybe Adelaide, you might get an extra couple of blockbusters next year, or don't haul us over the coals and we'll look after you knowing that you've been screwed over. That sort of stuff happened, do you reckon, behind the scenes?
I wouldn't. Surprised. So Nathan said that?
Yeah.
Well, he's pretty straight up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff that happens behind closed doors that,
Because if you're the Crows, you'd be fuming, but they've handled it with grace.
But not just the Crows.
Yeah.
It's robbed a few teams.
Yeah.
And the game itself.
Absolutely. And how's Ben Keys feeling? He's thinking he's the hero. I imagine he would have been out of the town in Adelaide that week, strutting around.
Did you hear Stephen Rowe get the ball out of his Didn't have a lot of confidence in him actually kicking that
He's
goal.
a good footballer, Ben Keys, but
he's a left footer.
Yeah.
He was a left footer, which Rowe realised once he actually ran around, he goes, oh, he's a left footer. Yeah. And then when he kicked the goal. But, look, it's been done to death. We all know he's made of blue. Move on.
I'm just picturing you just shuffling across.
It's not that.
No, when it's close, it's coming in quick, and there's lights and blokes jumping on your back. And anyway, really interesting. We touched on the Bulldogs result. There was connotations for a different reason at the other end with that. There'd been talk around Adam Simpson's future. Justin Langer was in town, I saw, and some of the West Coast board potentially discussing his future. Does that keep him in a job because it shows the players are playing for him, or do you still think they need a clean break? He's a former teammate of yours.
Well, who's going to make a big difference at that footy club if they come in right now? I'd argue no one. It's amazing when you get better players come back in. McGovern came back in, made a difference. You've got a guy now that's prepared to go through this building period. Why wouldn't you keep a guy that you've got signed on that sort of money? So you're not bringing someone in that then has to go through that. I think they're making the right decision. I think Simo's making the right decision by saying stick around. And you're right, they did play for him. They now lose the number one pick, and obviously depending on results this week.
Yeah, well, that's another discussion itself. Before we go on to that, did you ever get sick of listening to Denis? That's the only question I have. Does the message ever get tired?
Sick of listening to him?
Not sick of listening.
No, because I found him, because I think, when someone has a little bit of intimidation, I think you probably can. If they don't have intimidation, you probably goes in one ear and out the other, and you just don't care. But when Dennis Pagan spoke, you listen, because if he caught you not listening, you're in trouble. You understand the message? You've heard it a million times before, but you don't get sick of it. You just understand it, so you can probably zone in and zone out a little bit.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. You mentioned the number one pick ramifications. There were two ends of the spectrum here. I had some North mates who were celebrating, bang, we're going to get Harley Reid. We don't have to orchestrate any sort of trade with West Coast. Potentially we get pick 2 if we get the right compensation for Ben Mackay. Then there are other North fans I saw saying, why are we celebrating? We're going to win 3 straight wooden spoons. This is not, we shouldn't be celebrating this. we're going to finish on the bottom again. Is the payoff for getting pick one and potentially a generational player like Harley Reid enough that you go, well, the wooden spoon doesn't matter? Or do you go, well, that's just third straight wooden spoon?
Isn't it funny how it's one's perspective? I was sitting with Corey McKernan yesterday, and he was sitting there cheering that North,
for West Coast.
He was cheering that North will get the
North
will get the number one pick, and I had the complete different view.
Yeah,
I thought, what 3 wooden spoons is, you don't want to be winning wooden spoons.
Yep.
I know Corey won one at Carlton.
He's more conditioned, you reckon?
I'm along those lines. And is Harley Reid is he that much better than pick 2, pick 3?
Well, I mean, there's big raps on this Daniel Curtin, who's a key position player from Western Australia. I think the Dustin Martin comparisons has built the hype around Harley because he's this powerful sort of mid forward who can play that role that everyone's sort of chased as a, they want that sort of player.
Yeah, no, I'm not cheering about a wooden spoon.
Yeah.
Maybe then, once the season's over, you sort of sit back and go, okay, we got the number 1 pick. But for right now, you're disappointed that you're sitting on bottom of the ladder again for the 3rd year in a row.
It'd be very North Melbourne to come out and win against Gold Coast this week in Hobart. That'd be pretty funny, wouldn't it?
I do have a theory about Gold Coast going down to places like Tassie. Obviously,
it's too cold for them.
Well, 100%. They're training up there in sunshine this time of year, and the humidity, and then they get to the Gold Coast. They've checked out. They can't play finals footy, and they go down to cold Tassie and play North. This is a big game. This is a game that North Melbourne could win on the weekend.
So
they've been close, sort of competitive for a fair bit against Richmond, but they've been around the mark the last few weeks. So this is a massive game. Watch your space.
It is funny because the win in the last game you've spoken about before can provide a bit of momentum into your pre-season. Speaking of the Suns, Damien Hardwick confirmed this morning 6-year deal for Gold Coast. So he's just been unveiled today. It's a big deal, isn't it? That's a big deal.
Yeah, it is. And, he was always going to get a long-term deal. I didn't think 6. I probably thought 4 or 5. But he's a 3-time premiership coach. He was always going to get a long-term one. That long, is it too long? Probably.
Maybe that's what they needed to get it over the line, I suppose.
Exactly. And that's
that.
why for everyone that thinks that, Dimma leaving Richmond was a silly move, well, if Richmond miss the finals this year, which they invariably have, and then, next year sort of miss the finals again and the year after again, well, Dimma's probably not at Richmond. They are looking for a new voice. I mean, Alistair Clark, look what happened to Alistair Clarkson. The great coach, Hawthorn end up shafting him and saying, see you later. And then, so Dimma to make the move when he has, I think has been a very good business decision for him, clearly, with a 6-year deal.
Absolutely. It is
good on him. But I have said, I'm not convinced that he's going to make a massive difference.
It is interesting that a lot of, in the AFL at least, coaches, when they go to their secondary clubs, haven't always had great success, even good coaches, whereas in somewhere like the Premier League, managers will be on their 3rd or 4th or 5th clubs. It's much more accepted. I guess there's more teams than there is in the AFL.
Well, you've got to look at the list, and I think the Gold Coast list is not too bad. I think they need they need a few a little bit more depth in, I think, all over the ground for that matter. So how much difference does the coach make? That's here to see. I've already made comment on that. So it's a watch this space for mine.
How we spoke about Dustin a while ago, but we spoke about it from his perspective about whether he would be thinking about sticking around at Richmond or maybe looking elsewhere. If you're Gold Coast, how hard are you going for Dustin Martin? Can he be the cherry on top that elevates them to a finals berth? And if so,
had a good year, Dusty, but he was very good on the weekend. I don't think he will leave Richmond because of the relationships, although a lot of those key relationships are now leaving the club. But I just can't see Dusty going to a whole new club, creating a whole new group of friends with people. The one person he does know up there is the coach.
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure Dusty's not going around to sit at Dimma's.
He's not best mates, and
I'm not sure they're mingling.
maybe different circles. You reckon?
I would have thought so.
Speaking of mingling, so that's a loose link. Jack Ziebell, not great to hear what happened after his final game on the weekend. So he's gone out in South Yarra here in Melbourne to the Osborne Hotel. There's been varying reports about what's went down, but the's been some
Good
guys.
venue, by the way, the Osborne.
There's been some,
there's never any trouble. Like the time's 252 times. No, I haven't been there for a while. Simon Lennox actually runs the Osborne.
Does he? Okay.
Good venue.
A few drink cards for you next time you go there.
And normally no dingbats there. I've never come. The times I've been there, it's not that type of place. Is what I'm saying.
Is it a concern for? I mean, we don't know all the circumstances of. The reports have been that it was unprovoked, but maybe these guys didn't get let in. They've gone out the front, and Jack's gone out the front on his own. Which, who knows whether that's the smartest thing.
If they didn't get let in, and this is the thing: everyone believes the reports and whatever is said in the paper, and just because it's written in the paper, it doesn't make it. No,
there is CCTV though, which I think will form.
Well,
that
doesn't tell the whole story.
No, it doesn't.
That doesn't tell you what happened prior to the being.
It doesn't. But I guess if you see Jack go outside, you'll see what happened from there.
Yeah.
The question I have is it a real concern for AFL players? I see people get up in their grills a fair bit when they obviously wouldn't want that. Has it ever been a problem for you or not?
No, not too often. Like, think about it. I've been into the industry since I was 16. I could count on one hand how many people have actually had the courage to come up and say something negative. And so count on one hand and think about the amount of times I've been out. It's a lot. So it doesn't happen too often. Well, it hasn't happened to me, and I know others that it hasn't happened. But that's the reason why clubs don't like players to go to these venues. But this is a very reputable venue. It doesn't have trouble.
And he's got to be able to celebrate the end of his career.
He's just played his last day, and he's So it's you know what, it's sad, it's wrong. Is it something that happens often? No. Should it stop players being able to go to those places? We are a very different country to other countries, and our sporting stars, that do go to venues and people are able to come up and say g'day. I think that's one of the great things about being Australian. You can rub shoulders with people in certain venues, and I'm sure people can't just walk up and say g'day to LeBron.
That might be
in America. But that's I think that's one of the great things. You go to places like Lamaro's on a Friday afternoon, and I saw Matty Lloyd in there the other week, and David Neitz was in there, and Mick Moldhouse was there, Dane Swan was there. This is all last week. I might have been there a little too often, but so you'd see people in there all the time, and people can come up and say g'day. I think that's one of the great things. You
did say to me off air, and you haven't said it on air. You said no, you were too intimidating for blokes to have.
Give it a spell. Now I'll go out and there will be 10 blokes come up. No, it's shocking what's happened to Jack, and really sad, because it does now put a doubt in players, and I can guarantee you what every coach that are in the finals right now, they're saying to all their players. You saw what happened to Jack Ziebell.
You're on lockdown.
You know what? Don't put yourself in those situations. Don't be going out and don't doing that, all because of something like that, which is, like I said, we're sad. Really
absolutely.
Sad.
Saw Gil McLachlan yesterday when we were talking about that goal review. He's wearing the same sling as you. Yeah. I didn't know he'd had his shoulder done.
Sprained little finger.
No,
I don't know. I don't know what he's had done, but he's got the same sling.
Yeah. I've seen a bit of vision of Gil. He didn't look too bad. He was lanky sort of operator.
Oh, footballer.
Footballer, yeah.
Yeah, he played state under-18s.
Did he?
And stuff, I think.
Yeah, okay.
He was 7'82" when he was about 8. But
you haven't compared shoulder tips with him?
No, I actually don't know what he's had, but he's wearing this exact
Melbourne Orthopaedic.
Who do you think it suits better?
Neither.
By the way, it comes off. You'll only have this on for one more week. It comes off Wednesday week.
And then you'll just
I'm starting. Then I'm starting my training
straight
regime.
into bench press.
So I'll be in the pool, physio, everything.
We did have a viewer comment actually, which we're about to get to some of our listener comments who suggested said your pipes are looking pretty good.
Oh, really? I haven't done a weight for 2 years.
Do you sit there and flex? Do you when you?
No.
I might have to go back and look through the vision and see what he's talking about.
I will be training very hard come next.
I can imagine. Looking elsewhere around the country this weekend, I saw a funny moment in the NRL. Jason Tomalalou plays for North Queensland. His 250th. He didn't take out his kids, didn't take out any family, took out his dog. Loved it. Have you ever seen anything
What sort of dog?
I'm not great with dogs. Was it a golden retriever maybe or something similar? But yeah, what did you?
Well, if you don't have kids, you can take it. I took my 2 nephews out.
Yeah,
actually.
did they love it?
Yeah, I was playing for Adelaide. I played my 250th in Adelaide, so and invariably one of them now goes for Adelaide rather than North Melbourne.
Yeah,
because he ran out on my 250th.
Yep.
And he was only a young kid. So, yeah, BT. You know what BT's massive.
He hates it.
Hates people taking kids out.
Yeah.
And I think it's one of the things that we do better now than ever. We celebrate players that have contributed a lot to our game. And you saw it on the weekend. Obviously, Jack and Trent and Jack, and it was the 2 Jacks. And bringing the kids out and their partners and wives and all that get to celebrate. And they go through a lot. The kids sacrifice seeing their dad a lot. So, I think it's okay to celebrate. And if you haven't got one, we'll bring your dog or your turtle. If you're allowed, I guess.
I'm interested in, will Carter have to be a North Melbourne supporter or will you let him decide?
I had this conversation only a week ago. Someone said, will he be a North supporter? And I'll be encouraging him to barrack for North because I figure that he's 4 now. By the time he's 15, they might have improved.
Well, you're optimistic. Yeah, hopefully in that time they have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? Because kids often depends how the team's going when they get to that age where they start really taking the focus in.
Correct. So it's good that they're ordinary now.
Yeah.
He's not really, he's not sitting down watching a game. So, yeah, might be perfect timing.
We've spoken about the Matildas a lot in the past few weeks. Unfortunately, they were knocked out of the World Cup by England in the semi-finals. They looked pretty tired in that game. Still an amazing performance. So they finished 4th. They obviously lost to Sweden in the third place playoff. They got a big celebration in Brisbane, presented on stage. I saw some pushback on this though. I saw, there was some social media commentary around suggesting, well, 4th is not worth.
There's always social media.
Well, I thought it was a bit rough because their best achievement, home World Cup. So this will never happen again in their lifetimes or our lifetimes that we get a home World Cup, and we probably won't get one for the men because we don't have the stadiums for it. I thought it was worth celebrating. I don't know what you thought. Or are you one of those people?
Why don't we have the stadiums for it?
So for the men, there's certain requirements in terms of capacity.
So MCG over 100,000.
Yeah. So the issue there is
off the stadium over 60.
Yeah. So not football specific stadiums. So we could use them, but FIFA doesn't like using those types of stadiums because they are
too far away.
Too far away. And so Amy Park, for instance, is only 30,000.
Yeah, not big enough.
Not big enough. And to host a semi-final, you need to be 60. To host a final, you need to be 80. So we've got...
You are right, because obviously they make the pitch, they call it, in the middle. And if you're at the MCG, even if you're in the box at the MCG, you're too far away from
I've watched a game at the MCG. It's not the same. Amy Park, you feel like you're right on top of the ground.
The other part of it is, as good as we think our grounds are in terms of how they're manicured, the MCG, I think... might have been one of the teams that came over a few years ago. They actually thought, oh, hang on, this ground, and talking about the G, wasn't carpet enough for them. They play on like it is
football grounds. Absolutely, that's why FIFA's got this ban for there can only be.
Can't be a little, like even just a little divot.
So there could be no. That's why there could be no AFL matches on any of the grounds that they've used, or they couldn't use Marvel or anything like that. There was a ban on other sports for a month leading up to the tournament.
Yeah.
So that's to make sure it's.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyway, Matilda's 4. So you're saying is it okay celebrating their achievement?
I think the way they've captured the imagination, and by the way, this whole World Cup, the world's imagination, and the numbers are just mind blowing. Sam Kerr, even though she's only played, a game and a bit in the World Cup, I think her status going into it helped build that excitement around it.
Yeah.
And then, waiting for her to play, and the girls did amazing. Yeah, I don't mind it. I think the more that we celebrate, the more we celebrate it, the more people get behind it and into the future. And let's hope that this is sustained and doesn't drop off. Now that the World Cup's over, it just doesn't go back to where it was, and I hope it doesn't.
All right, so one of our favourite times of every week is going through our listener comments. We always get some great feedback on every show. I'm going to throw a few at you. So last week you said that Harry Mackay.
Who's this from?
This is from. It says Jane is in Jain. So Jane Melbourne. So I don't know if that's their actual name. Anyway,
could be a he.
That's what I mean. Yeah. So last week you said that Harry Mackay should maybe play reserves unless he was absolutely tearing
the track up.
Yeah. So they have said, I can't stress enough that I'm not comparing Mackay to Carey.
I would have thought no.
But obviously there's no way anyone would send Carey out for the early game unless it was for disciplinary purposes. I'm just wondering what your opinion is on how good a player needs to be in this circumstance before he's an automatic seniors inclusion provided he's fit. And then, for instance, if the circumstances were the same, except the names are switched, would you be thinking of bringing Charlie back through the twos as well?
It's a very good question, and I'll say it like this. And the way I answered it last week, and I got a little bit of feedback on Twitter, which is great. It means people are listening, and they're right. A couple of those, he has played games where he's had 20 disposals and taken 10 marks. So thank you for all of those people sending it through, and they're right. What I said about Harry is it's about his competitiveness, and sometimes he can look, he doesn't compete as hard as what I would like him to compete. So for me, it was about the way he trains. So how good he's definitely good enough to come back in after a long layoff, which it was a fair layoff. So I have no problem with that, but it does come down to your training form for me. He had 10 disposal, kicked a goal, Joe the Goose over the top from Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie looked after him.
Yeah, so Charlie. For me, the form Charlie's in, Charlie could miss 20 weeks and come back in.
Yeah.
Paddy Dangerfield missed 20 weeks, come back in.
Because they're that type of player, you're saying.
Correct. And I think Harry showed on the weekend that he was probably a run short, which is fine. They get away with the win. Didn't contribute all that much. So if they'd lost that game, I guarantee you that the talk would be maybe a little bit different, and maybe he didn't contribute as much as what they would have liked. But well done. They get a game into him, and their finals bound. So well done, by the way, to Carlton, who I predicted would make the 8 this year.
Just not 10 weeks ago. This is from Manny. Good to see you, Duck. Speedy recovery. Always a sad day to see the exit of some of the great players. What a gun Jack was. Sad for Nic Nat not being in the side who won against my Pies. Thanks always for your podcast. Much love, Manny. Speaking of that for Nic Nat, how much would that sit with you, do you reckon, not being like you're there at the club but you don't play on the day? It'd hurt a little bit, wouldn't it? It'd be a void, do you think, in how he views his career?
Yeah, well, only he can answer that, but I'll answer it.
Because he was out with an ACL.
Yeah, I'll answer it this way. I remember when Johnny Longmire missed out in 96, Smithy, Matty Armstrong missed out in 96. Those three players are all on the verge. Horse would have been in the side if he's obviously didn't have his knee. Smithy and Matty were right on the cusp. I think they were both emergencies. Both played, I think, nearly the whole year or a bit of that year. So could have easily been in the team. I think it stays with you for a long time. He's the type of player, though, Nic Nat, that is just, I know what it'd sit with me forever because that's the way I'm wired. And like I said, the one game that sits with me forever, I've won 2, and I think about 98. That's the only game I think about. So to not have done, I assume it would, but only he can answer that.
This is from Simo67. Don't know if it's Adam Simpson. No mention of Bunga Hurn last week, boys. So we might have missed off Shannon Hurn off our retirees list. So apologies to
Oh, yes,
Shannon Hurn.
yes. And he was, underrated player. We've had a couple of captains off the halfback flank, underrated players. Woosher, captain, obviously a couple of flags in the 90s, and then Hurney was, just a consistent, obviously known for one, well, not known for one thing. He just had that beautiful kick. Sorry for leaving him out. He'll be sorely missed given the type of character that he is around the club. If you listen to Simo, he rates him really highly. So, they've lost some pretty special people at that footy club.
No doubt.
When you think about, Nic Nat, who's, a ripper as well, especially,
Nic Nat, Hurn, Shuey.
Shuey, the type of people that they are. So big losses.
Now, whenever I see my name pop up in the comments, I just, what's this? This is from Tony Walker. Ayrton, you are a really solid performer, a bit like John Rantelle. Now, straight away, because he's not my vintage John Rantelle. He's
70s.
70s. So I'm going, oh, shit. Is this a sledge?
No, not a sledge.
So
very, very good player.
So he was what? He was South Melbourne and North Melbourne, I think, was it? Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Very good.
So I should be happy with that?
You should be very happy with that. I would have thought a little bit, overrating you.
Generous.
I would have said you're more of a. Actually, I'll come up with. I'll come up with some sort of performer.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for this. Yeah. Well, like Zach Dawson or something.
Yes, very much as Zach Dawson. You get a game every week, but not necessarily that talented.
This is from Aaron Farley. I understand what Wayne's saying regarding the bye before the finals. You suggested you liked it because teams get back to full strength. But wait until players are under the concussion protocol in a prelim and are automatically ruled out of a grand final. It'll end up with legal challenges. Should we have it before the grand final instead, do you reckon?
There has been talk about doing that. I think you just lose. People already say how much momentum we lose before the finals with that bye, let alone before a grand final. It's a great question. Clearly, if you've got guys that, for that reason, if you had one or two of those guys, or someone had a niggle and then missed the prelim, but 2 weeks would make them play. Therefore, a better players playing. There's an argument every way. I don't mind how it fits now. I don't mind that bye leading into the finals at all.
For the record, I'm against any bye. Just run through.
You just reckon go straight through?
Run through. Yep. It's worked out for a couple of teams.
Well, the Bulldogs wouldn't have a flag if that was the case.
Oh, it's tough.
And it's one of the great memories. The Bulldogs winning that flag. I reckon in the last it is under 10 years.
It's a dead week, and I just think it's unnecessary.
It's not a dead week. You had time to other time, or when you were working when I was working in this. I love that week.
I didn't, because I was trying to fill in what am I going to report on today? Is bloody nothing going on.
It's a great week.
This is from Staff Sergeant Spacebar. Great pod, boys. Anton, got a cue for Wayne regarding holding the ball. I think taking possession of the ball should be considered prior opportunity, because you don't have to take possession, you can knock it on. We see too many players take possession of a dead ball when they know as soon as they do, they'll be tackled. That player should be pinged. It'll reduce stoppages. Are you with me?
No, I think you need prior, but you don't need a lot of prior. You only need a split second. And if you don't release it or try to get rid of it, then I think it should be holding the ball. So what he's trying to say is what's considered prior, I think that should be shortened.
Yep, I can understand.
Because these players can get rid of it a lot quicker than what they do, and a lot of them pick it up and they have a second and they deliberately take the tackle. And that's what I think he's alluding to. And so I agree with that. But there has to be an element of prior. I just think it's too long.
The one that frustrates me the most, and I understand why they don't pay it, but it's when they say a player doesn't have prior, but then the tackle's not held in. They're just not disposing of the football. They go to kick it and the ball just spills loose. That's the one that frustrates me.
Yeah, that should be holding the ball. Like
it's because I think it's incorrect disposal.
The other one that I think we all get confused by, if you've had prior and you just give it to someone, a metre apart and just give it to someone so they get tackled because you don't want to just bomb it, then I'm a little bit about paying that.
Oh, team prior opportunity.
Well. Yeah, well, you could have cleared the footy, but you don't. So you just give it to someone that you know is going to get tackled straight away. They get tackled, and then you have a baller.
Final listener question. This is from Scott Brushett, and I've read this one, and I must say before we start that I disagree with you here, Scott, but I think the Duck might be in the same category. I hear so much about Cotchin. I'll throw this out there. If Cotchin plays at the Hawks during their three-peat, he's not in the best 22. Awesome career and great player, but a little overrated. Richmond don't win without Dusty, but at his peak, he isn't taking Mitchell's, Hodges, Lewis or Sewell's spot on the ground.
Oh, disagree. No, Cotchin's a gun.
Yeah.
He's a suit. By the way, Hodgie was a halfback flanker for most of his career, so he's well, he was.
Yeah, I know. Just
by the way, a gun.
Just the way you said it was
no,
a bit he's just a halfback
no,
flanker.
but I'm saying, so he's not in the middle of the ground. And Lewis, I mean, you're talking about a guy, Cotchin's a superstar. Don't underrate his hardness and the way he went about the four. He had more. Sewell was a bull. Cotchin's way more class than Sewell. So I would have thought Cotchin could have easily taken Sewell's position if you want to talk about taking positions. And that's taking nothing away from Brad Sewell, who was a gun and played well in big games as well, Sewell. But no, don't underestimate Trent. And the way he transformed, I know we've already said this, but the way he transformed his game into more of a team player, less possessions, but just tough, hard, skilled captain, and had a bit of mongrel in him too. Disagree.
Yep. Well, thanks again to all our listeners who are posting these questions. We're getting more and more every week, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. You can subscribe on YouTube through Apple and Spotify, and we're looking at all of them. So if you've got anything you want to ask the Duck, get them in there, and we'll try and get them to him. It is growing week on week.
1 week, and you know what? 1 week to go, and then then the finals start, and plenty.
We get the week off, and then we got to twiddle our thumbs for a week.
There's plenty to talk about.
You've already probably got all these cashies booked in for that week, do you?
No, I don't do that. I don't do that. But I've got a little bit of travel coming up, so I'll be interstate the next couple of weeks. But I'll be back for this.
Make sure you are. Always look forward to seeing you on a Monday, and I'll see you again soon.
Hooroo.
You can either take the red pill, you'll wake up, everything was a dream, or you can take the black pill, you can get torched.
Well, I suppose getting torched won't hurt that much. I don't feel anything.
Wait for it.
Oh, wait. I just got a new client.
Get torched! Get torched! Get torched!